One time in elementary school, he asked his teacher about black people in history. She told him, "The Negro has no history," a statement he never forgot. Arturo Alfonso Schomburg was born on January 24th in 1874 in Santurce, Puerto Rico, 1 year after the ending of slavery on the island. His mother, Mary Joseph, was a black woman from the Virgin Islands. His father was Carlos Schomburg, a white man of German descent. He was raised by his mother. He had one sister. He attended elementary school and some secondary school, but never attended a university. Schomburg's experience in Puerto Rico with youth clubs and being around cigar makers helped develop his early interest in Puerto Rican independence movement, the history of Latin America, Caribbean, and black people in history, especially Toussaint Louverture and the Haitian Revolution. Most of his early years were spent in Puerto Rico. However, he also spent some of his time with his mother's family in the Virgin Islands. While in the Virgin Islands, Schomburg decided that he needed to go to New York City and become part of the Puerto Rican and Cuban independence movement. He left the Caribbean and arrived in New York City in April 1891. He was a 17-year-old immigrant. Very quickly after his arrival in New York City, Schomburg became active in the Cuban and Puerto Rican independence movement. He attended speeches by José Martí, Eugenio María de Hostos, and Ramón Batance. He joined the movement and devoted time to the cause, including raising money for arms for freedom fighters. In the year 1892, two significant events occurred in Schomburg's life. Schomburg and the Afro-Cuban Rafael Sierra organized the Los Dos Antilles, the Two Islands Political Club, with the aim in assisting with the independence of Cuba and Puerto Rico. In the spring of 1892, Schomburg traveled to New Orleans to do work for the political club. This was his first exposure to the Jim Crow South and African-American life. The war and its ending had a direct impact on Puerto Ricans and Cubans' independent movement. The war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898. In the Treaty of Paris, Spain gave up Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines to the United States. The United States occupied Cuba, but as provided for in the Teller Amendment, did not try to annex it. In May 1902, Cuba was given its independence. With the end of the Spanish-American War in 1898, the independence movement began to fall apart. Groups were disbanded, and Schomburg moved away from his involvement in Los Antilles and the movement. In 1892, Schomburg became a lifelong Mason. He joined the Spanish-speaking lodge El Sol de Cuba, number 38. His active involvement with the Masons was bringing new responsibilities as he demonstrated both his leadership and organizational skills. Over time, the membership at the lodge El Sol de Cuba was decreasing, and the decision was made to open membership to non-Spanish-speaking individuals, mostly African Americans. With increased membership, the lodge voted to change the name from El Sol de Cuba to Prince Hall Lodge number 38 in honor of the Freemasonry founder, Prince Hall, in 1784. The American Negro must rebuild his past in order to make his future. A group tradition must supply compensation for persecution, and pride of race the antidote for prejudice. History must restore what slavery took away, for it is the social damage of slavery that the present generation must repair and offset. Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. During this time, Schomburg met his mentor, fellow Mason, and lifelong friend, John Edward Bruce. John Edward Bruce was born a slave. Like Schomburg, Bruce shared a deep passion for uncovering the history of blacks worldwide. In 1911, Schomburg, Bruce, and others formed a society called the Negro Society for Historical Research. It included African Americans, individuals from the Caribbean and Africa, with the goal of research, scholarship, and publication. John Edward Bruce introduced Schomburg to Alan Locke. Alan Locke was a writer, philosopher, and educator. He was also the first African-American Rhodes Scholar. His publication, The New Negro, in 1925, helped him earn the title, the father of the Harlem Renaissance. Schomburg and Locke remained lifelong friends. Based on John Edward Bruce's suggestion, Schomburg joined the American Negro Academy, the primary and most prestigious group of African-American scholars during that time. The group included W.E.B. Du Bois, the first African-American to receive a Ph.D. from Harvard University. Also, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, writer, historian, and known as the father of Black History and Black History Month. Schomburg became an active member and was eventually elected president of the Academy. In 1918, he was elected to the position of Grand Secretary of the Mason Lodge, which increased his responsibilities and travel. He continually collected books, pamphlets, and other items on the African diaspora while working full-time as the mailroom supervisor of the Latin American division at Bankers Trust on Wall Street. The Harlem Renaissance was a cultural, social, and artistic movement that took place in Harlem in the 1920s. Schomburg was well known and respected as a historian, collector, researcher, and lecturer. Schomburg was close friends with many artists and writers, including Langston Hughes and Claude McKay. In 1925, Schomburg published his essay, The Negro Digs Up His Past. It had widespread distribution and influence. The historian, Dr. John Henry Clark, told of being so inspired by the essay that at the age of 17, he left home in Columbus, Georgia, to seek out Mr. Schomburg. In an interview with Civil Rights Journal, Clark described his first encounter with the man who opened up my eyes to the fact that I came from an old people, older than slavery, older than the people who oppressed us. He was holding down the desk. I was a teenager then, so I wanted to know the whole history of my people all over the world. Henceforth, in the hour of his lunch hour, "Sit down, son," he said. "What you're calling African history, Negro history, are the missing pages of world history." In 1926, Schomburg's collection, library of 5,000 books, 3,000 manuscripts, 2,000 etchings and paintings, along with several thousand pamphlets, was brought by the Carnegie Foundation and donated to the 135th Street branch of the public library. The collection was sold for $10,000, which is equal to about $147,000 today. The collection became the foundation of the Division of Negro Literature, History, and Print at the branch. After the sale, Schomburg traveled to Europe, especially Seville, Spain, to research the African influence in southern Spain and Europe. He returned with over 180 books, which he donated to the library. In 1932, Schomburg became the curator of the 135th Street Library collection of Negro literature, history, and print division. The library became one of the centers of academics, artistic and social life in Harlem and New York City. It also housed the American Negro Theater. That was the starting point for many black actors, including Harry Belafonte, Ossie Davis, and James Earl Jones. Schomburg died in 1938. Since his death, the library continued to grow, and in 1940, the library was named the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. In January 2017, the Schomburg Center for Research was named a National Historical Landmark.